Okay, today on the podcast, we've got episode 2 with our boxing chat with Jason Patterson. How you doing, Jace?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing, Coach?
I'm okay, thank you. So, again, for the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to be talking boxing, chat about boxing like we normally do. Like you said, it's going to be every week, once a week. But today, I want to talk about, what we're both going to talk about is the most confusing thing in boxing is the world championship organisations. And obviously you've got the WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF. If you want to count the IBO, you can count the IBO. And then to add to that, you've got the lineal, which is not a recognised organisation, but it's still thrown around there. And how confusing it is at the minute you've got, so for instance, with the WBA, we'll talk about the WBA first. And what I've spoke about to you all week is that you've got 2 world champions in one organisation. So you've got the WBA
for one weight class,
every weight class has got 2 world champions unless one's vacant. But so the WBA, you have the WBA regular, which is the original belt, the black with the gold plaque, and then you've got the WBA super, which has been there the last couple of years, the last few years. And how confused? So you've got 2 world champions in just one ranking with one organisation, and how confusing?
Yeah, but the WBA regular becomes the The WBA is the WBA, but then it becomes super when you hold a title in a different major government body, that does not include the IBO, which is only WBC, IBF, WBA, and IBO. That's the 4 major bodies. The 4 major government bodies. But I think when you win the WBA title, if you hold a belt in any of the other ones, any of the other 3, you get promoted to super, and then your title becomes a regular WBA, so that the rest of the WBA ranked boxers can fight for it, basically.
Yeah, I think it's like crazy. It's like if you look at the heavyweight division, because obviously we've been prepping for this episode, so we've been looking at different items. We've looked at all
definitely.
Looked at all the rankings of all the different bodies, the top 10s, and we've all looked at the heavyweight rankings. Tyson Fury's got the WBC in the lineal. Anthony Joshua's got the rest, as in he's got the WBA, Super, IBF, WBO, IBO. But if you're going by the book and the actual rule book and the actual ranking system, the official rankings, there's 3 world champions. Manuel Char is the other world champion.
Yeah, he's the WBA regular world champion.
So that is crazy. So you've got Dillian White, Povetkin, Hunter, Ruiz. They're probably all better than Manuel Char, all of them. But yet he's got the other belt, and it's crazy. And then you've gone from that to then recent times with Lomachenko and Canelo and the franchise.
So that's interesting, because a franchise champion is only found in the WBC, and I think the first ever franchise champion was Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah,
he was willing to relinquish his belt, and I don't know exactly the time frame. Now I'm starting to think that it was around the time where we was asking for Triple G fights.
Yeah.
And I think at the time he was willing to relinquish his belt, and I think that was the WBC. And I'm not sure about that. I will have to research. But I know he ended up being made a franchise player, a franchise champion, because of his accomplishment in the world sport in boxing. And not only that, but how big he is of an icon and how much he sells. The WBC wanted to keep attaching his name to him. So they could not afford for him to relinquish his belt, because they'll make the WBC, which is known so far as the most prestigious governing body. They wanted to keep attaching their name to Canelo, so they came up with a franchise belt, which basically is saying that because of all your accomplishments and how much you draw to the sport, we're going to franchise you. He cannot lose that belt. Anybody that beats him will not get that belt. And basically that belt is voted by 2/3 of the people that's within the sanctioning body, the members of the sanctioning body. If 2/3 votes, that's how they give it to a fighter. And so far as I know, there's only 2 fighters in boxing at the moment that's been franchised. It's Canelo and Loma. And Loma, obviously, Devin Haney became the WBC world champion because Loma was promoted to franchised, and they can't be touched. And basically, I was reading about this article about Dan Rafael, and he basically explained that all of this is for the WBC to still attach this sanctioning fees to those fights.
Yeah.
It's all about money and politics.
Yeah,
and WBC cannot afford, I guess, to get one up on by the other sanctioning bodies.
Yeah.
So they always want to get their name attached to the big fights.
Well, yeah, I can. Well, if you think Lomachenko and Canelo both relinquish their WBC belt,
yeah.
So now that means that WBC won't get the money that they would have for staging a fight for the WBC belt. But if you're gonna make them a franchise champion, that means at the end of every fight they're gonna have that round their shoulder or bringing it to the ring or stuff like that. So it's advertising as well for the biggest name in boxing. Well, the top 2 pound for pound of Canelo and Loma as the Ring magazine, and they both got the franchise belt. But what I find ridiculous is they can't lose it.
No, they can't lose it.
And as a champion like Devin Haney, Devin Haney's a very good fighter. But would you feel? So when Devin Haney won the WBC belt, did he fight for the vacant belt then with someone? He did, didn't he? Did he, or did he get it? No, he got awarded it first, didn't he?
No. He became. A lot of people was arguing that he became a world champion without having a fight.
Yeah, he got awarded
after his first fight.
Yeah,
was a title defense for the WBC. And that's when people was like, okay, he's the champion because he defended for the first time. But he never had the fight to gain the belt.
Yeah.
He was given the belt.
Would you feel like a world champion then? You know what I mean? I bet he didn't. I bet he's glad that now fair enough, now he's had a fight for it, I bet you. But you've been and especially the prestige of Loma.
I think it's perspective though. Because as a fighter and us as fans, you look like, man, you didn't win that title like this fighter did. This fighter had a fight for his. Yours was given to you. I mean, but then from the fighter perspective, he's been trained since a little kid. Then he goes up the ranking, and he's finally a mandatory fighter. And the WBC, we already know you got to defend your title once a year.
Yeah.
So now he's mandatory for Loma. And then Loma relinquished his belt and get promoted as a franchise player. I don't even think they consider relinquishing. I'm not sure. But you get promoted as a franchise champion. Now they give the belt to Devin Haney. To the public, it may look like, man, you ain't no true champion. But he wanted to fight Loma. Yeah. It's not his fault that it didn't happen. So I don't know how he would feel, but I know he knows he put in the work every day. And he was ready to fight the man. And the fight was never given to him. And now he got the belt. So I can't knock him. I really can't. I mean, I know how the public gonna look at it though.
Yeah, the public will look in a certain way, something similar to what I said.
Yeah, I completely understand that, but we ain't grinding it out like they are.
The Canelo thing, Canelo jumping in and out like middle, super light heavyweight, back to super middle. No one knows where Canelo's actually going to stake his claim as being a champion at the minute. So, but for instance, then looking at another point of view, bringing up Canelo.
Yeah.
Callum Smith had the super when he won that was it the WBS super, the super series when he beat Groves.
That's was it called the Super 6?
No, that was the super middleweight one years ago with Carl Frost and Andre.
Okay.
Whatever it was, some series anyway.
When he beat Groves, right?
He beat Groves in the final.
That's true.
He got the WBS because Groves had the regular. When he beat Groves, see, this was the thing. When he beat Groves, that turned into the super. Groves only had the regular belt. If you remember if you look at the press conferences, Groves is holding the regular belt, the black belt.
Gotcha.
When Callum Smith has got the trophy and all that, it's the WBA super belt. There's no unification. like I say, Callum Smith had the diamond belt, which is not the legitimate world
It's
title.
It's an honorary belt, but I think the diamond belt was given to whoever win that fight, right?
I don't know. No, because when he beat, he was in the semi-final, the kickboxer. He beat someone, and I think he held the belt after that. I don't know. I'm not 100% too sure on that, but
I just know it's an honorary belt. It's just in honor of a historical fight that you were in.
the first fight he got introduced was Pacquiao Cotto. The winner of Pacquiao Cotto got the WBC diamond belt. That was the
Which
first.
is considered a historical fight. Those type of fights.
Yeah, but what my point I was trying to make is so Callum Smith is now the WBA super champion, and Rocky Fielding had the WBA regular belt. Now Canelo went up to super middleweight, beat Fielding, claimed the WBA regular. So that's another weight. So he can say I'm now 4-weight world champion. But the legitimate world champion in WBA, the legitimate world champion is Callum Smith. That's why I think it's unfair that there's 2 world titles in one division, and it looks like all the governing bodies are copying each other. And now,
yeah, I think the IBF is the only one that's doing it a more simplified way, but the WBO got certain things, the WBC got certain things that's attached to politics, and the WBA definitely.
And then you could look at the WBO. Now the WBO, one thing that's really confusing just from a watching it on TV standpoint and seeing fighters at press conferences and stuff like that is the WBO Intercontinental or the European, but it looks exactly the same as the WBO world title. No difference.
Yeah.
So
I think.
understand. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of internationals and intercontinental belts anyway. I think it's just confusing. You don't need them. I think it's all to do with money and sanctioning. That's all I think. It's sanctioning fees. It's all to do with money. But it shouldn't look exactly the same as the world belt, because you want, as a world champion, you've trained all your life, you fought your way there. You want to, and then you've got someone who's had half your fights or whatever and just won an intercontinental belt. Looks exactly the same as your belt. They can make it different. It's so much things.
I don't know if it's extra. It's definitely lucrative. It's definitely all to do with money. Yeah. I understand that from a sanctioning fees from the sanctioning body, but also you got the like you said to me before in a separate conversation, like the promotion aspect of it. But also, who knows? Maybe it's an extra motivation for the fighters as well.
Don't get me wrong. I understand.
To just collect belts. It's like trophies in any other sports. I
understand from a point of view where you look at it from a promotional side. Now, promotional side, if you just put fighter A against fighter B, sell it as a local fight. So, for instance, it's only going to be 2 local fighters. Now, like you say, it's only going to sell if it's for a belt or it's a rivalry. So if it's not a rivalry and it's not for a belt, but if you could put WBO Intercontinental on a poster or on Facebook, something like that, people are going to, especially casual fans, you want to sell some tickets to your mates and stuff like that. Look at, because it's got WBO Intercontinental, you might, that's a big fight, yes, for the WBO, because everyone's heard of it. You'd have heard of it in, watch big fight or WBO. I think that helps the sport in a way, because it helps sells tickets.
Yeah, it helps publicize the sport.
I understand it from that, because fighters get paid from that.
Yeah.
Like the British, you go into like the British side of things. So the British side, that's quite simple. It's simple now. So you've got, as you're starting out, the first title you want to win, really, the first is your area titles. So Midlands area title, Southern area title. Then you progress to, if you're going to do it correctly, the English, then the Commonwealth, then the British, then European. But that's, so I think domestically it's a bit more simple. But like, then you look at world, then as you get to the world stage, it's like, okay, then let's say you've just got in your top 10 WBA rankings, and you've won the WBA. Let's say you win the WBA regular belt, but you're not number one, because the WBA super champion is number one. I just don't. I think it's very good. Like I said,
Nah, I get it. And there's so many more belts. Like we just talking about world champions at the moment, but there's so many more than just the world champion belts, like you said, intercontinental. I mean, you got super titles, regular titles, interim titles.
Yeah.
You got pearl, diamond, silver, gold titles, international, youth, and continental titles. So you got a whole rack, a whole bunch of them.
What I mean is that we just named 10 different. That's in one organisation,
and that's just the ones I named. I'm sure there's much more than
that's
that.
One, like you say, pearl, international, youth,
Diamond, silver,
international, diamond, silver. That's just one organisation as well. Now, what I'm saying does it affect me? Am I still going to watch boxing? I'm still, of course, I am. But what is confusing is if I'm just starting to watch the sport. Let's say I've just started to watch, I don't know, Fury or Joshua, some of the big names. Okay, I want to get into the sport. Then all of a sudden, you're like, there's so many belts, and you'd be like, how does this work? And I'll swear that the presidents of these governing bodies don't even know what's going on. I think it's copycat because they all do it. They all copy each other, adding belts.
I believe the members or the governors or whatever those governing bodies, I believe they have to vote for it.
Yeah.
But I believe it's just like a business. WBA is in competition with IBF. IBF is in competition with WBO. And at least from the public standpoints or the media standpoints, the WBC is at the top of the chain. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like Nike, and WBA might be Adidas. And they're always trying to get one upon each other. And they look at what the competition is doing and try to do their own version.
Yeah.
Just to collect more sanctioning fees, because the sanctioning fees, I'm assuming, is what brings the fund to those associations.
Yeah, of course. And like you say, it covers their wage. Don't wrong, some of it is needed because it covers their wages. So let's say it's for a WBC belt.
Yeah.
That means then you'll have to have a WBC ref, WBC judges, WB officials, stuff like that. So that they have to be paid. So there has to be some sort of sanctioning free, but there is extra there has to be some. But they're just getting more money now by saying, oh, well, you two can fight for the WBO Intercontinental, right? We'll sanction that. I think that's crazy. And so the IBO, for instance. Now the IBO.
Well, see, you got to explain the IBO to the people because it's not like the rest of them.
The IBO is essentially, to a degree, the same as every WBC, WBA, it's the same. It's an organisation. I presume they've got all the officials. It's been about quite a long time now. The first ever time I really, really recognised it was when Lennox Lewis had it. And then I always remember Ricky Hatton holding it. Now, Pacquiao's held it. There's lots of fighters who've held it now. Floyd Mayweather's held it. Joshua's held it. Klitschko. They've all held it. Now, and then he gets stick. He gets it's not official. Well, there was a time when the WBO was not official. Not so long ago.
Well, not so long ago at all. I mean, the WBO was born, quote unquote, like it was created in 1988.
Yeah.
And it didn't become recognized as a major governing body till 2004.
Yeah.
So the era of undisputed before 2004 was only 3 belts. You was undisputed as a champion if you held the IBF, the WBA, and the WBC.
Yeah.
So when they say the last heavyweight, we said something about that about Lennox Lewis. You brought it up last week when you said you believe that he's the last undisputed fighter as a heavyweight. And you were correct because at the time the WBO was a belt, but it wasn't looked at as a major body. So you wasn't undisputed if you held it.
Well, just cover. So a lot of people say, well, yeah, well, on the WBO was. I saw like George Foreman that and Tommy Morrison held it in the 90s. So it's been about for years. And yes,
it has.
Top fighters have held it, but what the ruling was you couldn't unify with it. So like what you're saying is you could be counted. Basically now you need all 4 belts to be the undisputed. You can unify with 2 belts, but back then if you had the WBO and the WBA, it wouldn't count as a unified, because all you've got to be recognised. But as far as I know, you've got to be recognised by the other governing bodies to unify. It was only this what we were speaking about the other day. It was only in 2004 that the WBA, WBC, and the IBF says yes, we recognise you, the WBO, as a sanctioning body. So now you need 4 belts. Back when Lennox Lewis fought Evander Holyfield, he unified with the 3 belts, because at the time the WBA, the IBF, and the WBC didn't recognise the WBO. Now they do. And now going back to the IBO.
And you know what's the funny part? Not to cut you off.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish your point. But in that fight with Evander Holyfield, and Lennox Lewis, the IBO belt was one of the belts, but they don't talk about it as an undisputed.
No,
they name it as a lesser belt.
Yeah.
So when they talk about undisputed, they're talking about the major governing bodies.
Yeah.
There might be more belts in the fights. They won't be talking about, because that you don't need them to become undisputed.
Yeah, I mean, look, my opinion on it is the way it's going as it is with all the belts. You might as well make it legitimate. And I mean, look, if it was me, there'd only be 1 belt. 1 belt, that'd be it. 1 belt. Like,
For every governing bodies.
No, just 1 world title. One.
Or just, well, at this, because the businesses.
That's never going to happen. I know that. But
unless they're going to unify, unless the WBC going to try to work with the WBA. And what we got to remember, and I don't know where all the headquarters are.
Yeah.
But those associations are always funded in different countries. And I think the WBC might come from Mexico.
Yeah.
They might come from all around the world, but I think it might have been created in Mexico. I'm not 100% sure. 100% sure about that. But I know on the WBC belt, there's 161 flags, and I think that's all the country that's involved in it. But I think it originated in Mexico. It's based out of Mexico.
Yeah, Jose Sulaiman and that, they're all Mexican. Yeah, the president.
The WBO, I think, is
Puerto Rican.
I think it's Puerto Rican. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I think it's Puerto Rican.
But my point was, well, if now WBA have got 2 world champions in one weight, in one division, WBC now has, because now you got your franchise. All the other belts probably will follow suit. What's the problem in adding the IBO really now? I understand at first they didn't want to add, like 20, 30 years ago. I understand, but now you might as well add it. Like I was going back to my point. I would much rather it be like the UFC. You have the
explain that, because I'm a boxer bias, boxing bias.
Yeah, look, and I am, but I understand. But I do watch some UFC. The way I see it, they've got in a let's say welterweight division, you've got the world champion, and then you've got the interim champion. That's it. The interim champion is the number 1 contender. 2 fighters will fight for an interim belt. They'll win the interim belt. He's now number 1 contender to face the champion. Simple as that. You have your top 10. That's it. Boxing, like we say, we've got Pearl, Intercontinental, Youth, International, Silver. That's just complicated. Way complicated.
I also wonder if all these things else, divisions in the sport are also created with the different promoters, promoter companies. Well, there's so many division in boxing, and boxing is like somebody like in the world of music that start independent. You don't have like soccer or like the NFL or the NBA, which is governed by an association. UFC is governed by an association, whereas the boxing world is like the music world. You got to, unless you get signed by a major label, you come up by yourself as an independent artist. You know what I'm saying? So you got to sell yourself and all that type of stuff. Well,
like you said, the difference between the UFC and boxing, I suppose, is boxing. UFC is run by it's one company, UFC, one president, Dana White. They'll have someone doing the rankings. And that's it. It's all like you dictate. Like there's one person making the shots. That's it. Whereas in boxing, you've got all the different promoters. God knows how many of the promoters out there in the world. There'll be thousands probably. You got your big boys. You got Top Rank, Golden Boy, Eddie Hearn. Fair enough. But Frank Warren. But your big boys are, you know, in the UFC, there's only one. So,
Sure.
and I do think that certain promoters do align that. Well, I know. Well, in my opinion, it's only my opinion that Frank Warren a lot of the time aligns himself to WBO. You look at all the Frank Warren fighters of old, and even now, they've all got Billy Joe Saunders, WBO. Yard fought for the WBO. Joe Calzaghe, WBO. God, there's Ricky Burns at the time was WBO. Nathan Cleverly.
Well, this is
WBO. I think it's just everything's WBO. But
you just stressed the point that about the WBO. Not to cut you off again, but the WBO handbook says, because I mean, you got rankings in all the major governing bodies, but the WBO is slightly different with the way they find the contenders, which it goes with the handbook. And the handbook would say it rates its fights, the fighters by the competition, by the TV ratings, by the relationship with the WBO community, like the relationship. So you talking about Frank Warren, he's aligned himself with WBO a lot. But the way they choose their fighters, who's going to fight for a title shot, one of the criteria is WBO community relationship.
Wow.
And then no drug-related problems. No drug-related problems. Cool. But I'm sure with politics, you can underline all those things. But so that's how they decide a challenger. That's different.
Yeah, and like another thing, I mean, what I would like to see, I think it's gone too far now, is I don't really, look, I understand from a lower level, if you're a promoter or your manager or your trainer, it's nice and it keeps your fighter motivated if he won an intercontinental. It's not or like, you know, interim or like, you know, a silver. It's nice. It's nice. And like you say, helps sell a show. If you've got a small show somewhere, it helps sell it. It does. But what I would like to see is in the top 10 rankings. It don't really matter about Pearl and, you know, all these different belts at a lower level. If you like the top 50. Don't really.
We ain't worried about those. Those ain't world championship belts.
I'd like to see in the top 10 of every belt, just one belt. That's it. And one, like the one thing
you think for one governing body that's around the whole sport, or you mean
no. You're never gonna change it to one organization.
Okay, so you want a top 10
in every division.
Keep it simple for every.
Like the WBC before they went crazy with the franchise, and I'd like to see WBC regular belt, the normal belt, the green and gold belt, WBC belt, and then the silver. That's it. The silver represents that you're the number one contender. The gold belt is reserved for the champion. Silver is the number one contender. Same with the IBF. IBF would be IBF, IBF champion, IBF interim. That's it. Same with the WBA. WBA, not WBA super and WBA regular.
Do you want to explain to the people the actual terms for every single major governing body as far as when you're a champion? Because you already talked about WBA. They have super and regular. And I think you spoke about
gold
if you win a title. We spoke about that earlier. WBO, they decided by the competition of the fighter, his TV ratings, the relationship with the WBO community, and drug related.
TV ratings as well. Really? Wow.
Yeah. The actual term in the handbook is positive television exposure.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming that's TV ratings.
Yeah, it sounds like
right?
it.
WBC though. WBC, by the way, when you guys, I'm talking to the people, right? So when you guys hear step aside money, just know that's WBC. They don't do that in the IBF. They don't do that in WBO or WBA.
So
step aside money.
So step aside money. So they tried to take Wilder with it, didn't they? Well, they were suggesting, I don't know if they attempted it, but they was going to say, would Wilder take step aside money to let Joshua fight Fury? But they only do that in the WBC.
Yes, only in WBC. So in WBC, you gotta, as a champion, you have to defend your title at the least once a year.
Yeah.
Unless you can, the mandatory or the one that you're supposed to fight for the title, will take the step aside money for another championship to occur. So like the Joshua and Fury fights, Wilder should take step aside. And I think Fury actually offered Wilder step aside money, like you said.
Yeah.
And the IBF, I think, is the only one I like their terms where you're just a champion and you have a mandatory contender. So you might have contender number 1 ranked or number 2 ranked in the IBF. And whoever's 1 or 2 are mandatory to fight for a world championship. So either you do number 1 or 2nd ranked, you get to fight for a championship, a world title. You're mandatory.
So let's say you're like 9th, for instance.
Well, that's when they have eliminators.
Yeah.
So the IBF do eliminators and you have to fight each other. And as you fight each other, you keep moving up in the ranks. But only if you're 1 or 2 in the IBF, you're mandatory to fight for a world championship belt. So that's the terms for every single ones: WBA, WBC, and WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO.
See,
but then there's all kinds of different belts too.
Yeah, of course.
This especially WBC, they have a lot of belts, interesting belts.
I swear to God, every couple of months the WBC makes another belt.
Yeah, I mean they have something called the eternal championship belt. Eternal, ETERNAL, eternal championship belt. And that one, I love this one. I mean, I was throwing a jab at you because I was like, Pacquiao could have never fought in that one. Because it says, designated for title holders to have never lost the belt or retired undefeated while having a series of consecutive title defense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't even know what this belt means, whether it's honor. I mean, I guess it's a real belt.
It's an honorary belt.
Current champion. So, like, who's on the... I guess Errol Spence. Who holds the WBC in welterweight? Errol Spence. So Errol Spence could fight for that.
No, he couldn't. I presume an honorary belt is when you're retired. No, he says he's never lost. But the only way you can
never lost or retired undefeated. So that's mean Ward had a WBC. Okay. I believe if Ward come out of retirement, light heavyweight, he can fight for the because he retired undefeated.
Yes.
Just like Floyd, I guess in those terms, Floyd could always come back out of retirement and fight for a belt.
Yeah, of course he could.
So yeah, but it's crazy. It's crazy, man. And then go ahead.
What I was gonna say is you've got the information on.
I got this information on. I went on the WBC site, but I also went on the DAZN site. There was an article about all the different titles and belts and different governing bodies and all that stuff. That was explaining to it. And I think they made that explanation because around the time Fury was claiming he was the lineal champion, which is actually a title that meant a lot in the late 1800s, which is the man who beat the man.
Yeah, it's the Ring magazine, isn't it? The Ring magazine's the lineal these days. But like you say, the lineal is, I understand this is an argument with the lineal. I understand why people don't count it, because it's not an official of the 4 sanctioning bodies. It's not an official belt. But the Ring magazine is held with prestige. A lot of fighters want to hold the Ring magazine because that means normally when you hold the Ring magazine, you're the number 1 in the division. I don't know anybody who's been held the Ring magazine. The number. You can't really see a Ring magazine.
Wilder, for instance, he might have been before he lost to Fury.
Yeah,
he would have been considered number 1 in the division because they held the WBC.
Yes.
Which they quote unquote, the talk in the media is the most luxurious belt to have. I mean, it's the most important, the most prestigious. I mean, belt to have.
I think at the time what happened was Joshua was number 1 because he had 3 belts.
Yeah.
And then Fury come along. So I think at the time he was Joshua 1, Wilder 2, Fury 3. Then
I don't know though, because I think the WBC, because he holds it most. Because you got to think about it, Wilder already held the WBC then.
No, but to be honest with you, I mean, just from a fan point of view, at the time,
Okay.
take Fury out the
Yeah.
equation. You look at Joshua and Wilder at the time. Fury had a better resume and he had 3 belts. Wilder only had 1 and hadn't really fought anybody.
Yeah, you can look at that, but because he held the WBC and because he defended it for the longest, so you got to think about Fury beats Klitschko by going to Germany. Was it in Germany the fight?
No, it was at Wembley.
I thought Fury went to go fight. No, I'm talking about Fury Klitschko.
Oh yeah, Fury. Obviously Joshua. Yeah,
Yeah,
Fury went to
Fury. Oh, if I said Joshua, my bad. I meant Fury Klitschko.
Yeah.
I think he went to Germany.
Yeah.
Beat Klitschko, got the WBA, WBO, and IBF, and I guess the Ring Magazine one or whatever. Yeah. He became the lineal champion because he beat the man.
Yeah.
You're the man who beat the man, or whatever the expression is, right?
Yeah.
And then he had to relinquish all his belts.
Yeah.
Joshua had got one of his belts, the IBF. Joshua ended up beating at Wembley a legend. At the time, he wasn't considered #1 heavyweight. He had just got beat by Fury.
Yeah.
And he hadn't fought in a while, I think, when he fought Joshua. Right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
He wasn't active.
He hadn't fought.
Not only he was old, he hadn't been active.
He hadn't fought since Fury.
Which was, what, 2015?
Yeah, 15, yeah.
So there was a big gap.
Yeah.
So for me to say Josh was #1 in the division because he beat Klitschko and had got all these belts, I can't say, because at the time, before he even won the IBF and bought that, I'm not Charles Martin, right? We ain't even gonna talk about that. Wilder the whole time was a WBC champion. I understand the competition, but because it's so prestigious to have the WBC, I believe Wilder wouldn't budge till he fight Joshua.
I agree with you in them circumstances, but I don't agree with where just because you're the WBC champion shouldn't automatically mean you take precedent. As in, like, let's say.
I know I've read that in one of those DAZN articles.
Yeah. I understand what you were saying, but let's say then, all right, let's say Pacquiao fought for the WBC against Furman. Let's say he did. He beats Furman, gets the WBC belt.
Yeah.
Don't rank him above Spence just because he's got the WBC belt. Spence, look, Pacquiao's my favourite fighter of all time. I think Spence beat Pacquiao. So therefore, I ain't going to rank, until he beats Spence, I don't rank Pacquiao above him.
That's true. No,
I don't think it should be a certain belt you get the ranking. At the end of the day, let's say you're the better fighter and you've got the IBF, WBA and WBO. You fought a better competition. You shouldn't take precedent just because you're the WBC champion, in my opinion. I get it's prestigious, but at the end of the day, it's still one of the 4.
I wouldn't be surprised if the way the WBC do the ranking, they'd be real cute about it and real careful about what fighters they give those rankings to.
Yeah.
And I bet you at the time, 1 or 2 are always one of the top fighters.
Yeah.
In the boxing game. So I believe each time you win the WBC, you are always going to be attached as one of the best, if not the #1. Because think about the state of heavyweight boxing before Joshua won the title. We can arguably see that the only champion after Fury disappeared, the only champion was Wilder. And when you think about when Fury won, what was the real rivalry when Fury beat Klitschko? It was all about Fury Wilder.
Yeah.
It wasn't no Joshua. He probably had just won. He had just beat Dana White in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the WBC, I
think that's a coincidence. I think it was.
You think so?
Like, well, let's say then that the WBC.
Trying to think about all the Could you tell me all the WBC champion at the moment? But you can skip the cruiserweight division because I feel like that one is dead in the water.
No, but what I'm trying to say is it's all on situation. By chance, it was Fury and Wilder. That sells anyway. That could have been for the WBA belt. Let's say the WBC belonged to Povetkin. Because it's Fury and Wilder, that's going to take precedence. That's going to be huge regardless. It wasn't huge and it wasn't relevant just because it was a WBC. I couldn't care if it was for no title.
No, I understand what you're saying. I just
Like,
think the WBC do things on purpose where they always attach the belt to one of the most famous and best fighters in the game. Think about it. They got a franchise
if you're
belt,
going to
right?
do that, if you're going to do
And they
that,
gave the belt to who? Devin Haney. Then they didn't make anybody fight for it.
no.
Devin Haney is not the star in the game. They know it's going to be hard to beat him for it.
But the thing is, yeah, but you look at that, Devin Haney ain't a star. He ain't a star.
No, he's an upcoming star. He's an upcoming star.
He ain't a star. Loma's a lot bigger star than him at the minute. Then you got to look at...
Loma's a superstar. I think superstar and star is two different things. I would think Devin Haney's a star. Loma's a superstar.
But then, okay, but really, if you're going about trying to attach your belt to a name, then if that's the case, it belongs to Joshua. Because look, as much as if I want, I mean...
What do you mean by that? Well, expand for me.
Right, so you're looking at, like, say, the biggest star in every... Dominic Fury, especially the last 12 months, the stock has risen massively. I think the WWE helped that. And telling everybody's story in mental health, I think, built that as well. But the biggest brand...
I think also him being British and coming to America and having that accent and having all that helped.
But I think the biggest of it, look, the two biggest stars in world boxing is Canelo and Joshua. If you're gonna pin a belt to a star in the heavyweight division, at the time, it's changing now, Fury's stock's rising, it'd have been Joshua. If that's the case, if you're thinking, try and type, because Wilder wasn't special. Wilder couldn't sell a ticket up until Ortiz. No one knew.
I think a lot of it is...
Wilder's fights
a lot of it is a Europe. I think it might have been outside the U.S. way of thinking. I don't necessarily would say European, but outside U.S. way of thinking. Because within the U.S., the numbers, any U.S. fights, I mean, I can take Floyd, for example, which is the biggest selling fighter of all time as far as like pay-per-views and stuff like that. If you check his attendance, none of them is comparable to what Joshua does in England.
No,
but if you just look at Deontay Wilder during that reign in that 10-fight, consecutive 10-fight defense for the world for his world title, he was drawing a lot of crowds in the U.S.
Was the I don't think it was on pay-per-view.
Well, pay-per-view ain't the same no more.
No, but what I'm saying is...
Maybe he's big in the UK, but we don't really do pay-per-view like that no more in the US. Since the PBC and Al Heyman, and look at ESPN, they're giving us free fights. That's the new wave. Pay-per-view is going away. It went away with HBO, technically. I mean, Showtime did a little bit of pay-per-view for Mayweather when he was...
I know what you're saying, but you said that the linking it to someone special. If you're going to link it to someone like with a bit special, you'd have linked it at the time to Joshua. Yeah,
but the thing is, Wilder was already holding the belt. So, like I said, Joshua should have fought him then. And maybe they would have made sure that if Joshua had to relinquish the belt, they probably would have made him a franchise champion. But the thing is, Joshua never got the belt. It's different if you got a special fighter like Joshua coming up. But then if somebody's already holding the WBC. But I bet you if the WBC was vacant, I don't know how that happens. If the WBC was vacant, I bet you they would have did everything for Joshua to hold it.
100%, 100%.
That's all I'm saying.
So what now then? So coming to the conclusion of it all, what would you want to see in the governing body? What would you want to see happen? Would you want to see it stay as it is? Would you want to see it change? What would you want to see? What would you like to see?
It's hard for it to change because of the history of everything. But I feel like they need to stop adding so many belts, and I feel like they're gonna keep adding belts because it brings more money. And since everything is generated, the whole foundation of what's governing boxing is all money driven. It's not about the fighters. It's not about the fights find the best. They want the best find the best. They do want that, but only if there's money involved.
I agree.
We want Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, but it ain't gonna happen until they can generate a certain amount of money.
I understand
so
that.
Till that mind frame is like that, I don't believe that we ever be able to change none of this.
Yeah, I get that. But I would like to see a similar thing to...
As the UFC.
And I do think...
I think it should be like the IBF. If not even based it on the UFC. Have it like the IBF. You have one champion, and then you do eliminators. So like a little tournament or whatever, and you just fight for who's going to be the number one ranked or second ranked to fight the champion.
Yeah.
I don't want to...
That is similar to like the UFC platform, though, really. As in,
Gotcha.
two contenders fight for the interim will fight the champion. But I don't think it's going to... I think it could happen eventually, because I think boxing's going to get to the point where it's ridiculous, where you could have three... it wouldn't probably be 3 or 4 world champions per governing body in one division, because we've already got 2 with the WBA now, 2 with the WBC. So you've got how ridiculous is that? You've got 2 champions in the WBA, 2 champions in the WBC. I would like to see 1 world champion, 1 interim champion. That's fine. You've got the number 1 contender belt. Fight for it. Then there you go. Simple.
I agree with that, but there's too much money involved.
Yeah, I agree.
We wish it would happen that way, and I probably would agree with your idea. I kind of want to go with the IBF instead of copying the UFC, but that's just me being boxing biased.
Yeah.
But either or, it's a good idea the way the UFC do it, or the way the IBF do it. But I have to say, like, I don't know, man. As much as, remember last week we was talking about the talents and how it's different, the fighters now. There's so much more talents coming up. I think these boxing governing bodies see all these talents coming through the door and just thinking money, money, money.
Yeah.
So do I think Lomar is scared to find Devin Haney? Hell no. I don't really believe fighters are scared. I mean, fear is in every human, but they've been doing this. They fight. They know they got to beat somebody to become somebody. You know what I'm saying? But I believe that those governing bodies realize all these talent. Why have them fight now? Whereas us fans, regardless of us complaining about the fights not happening, we're going to still watch. Because Lomar's amazing. Devin Haney's amazing. Deontay Wilder was amazing. Maybe he didn't have the skills of most of those boxers, but we used to love watching his knockouts. It was thrilling. And all that sells. So it's like you see all these great fighters even find bums or people that's not up to their level at the elite level, because all pros, none of them are bums. I'm just comparing pros to pros, the elite levels. We're just going to keep watching. And then every now and then we're going to get a big fight.
Yeah.
And that's how they sell the sport. And I believe, in a way, that might be the reason why boxing might always be the number 1 martial arts sport, because the UFC, you see all these great champions end up getting those losses early, and they can never build that mystique by avoiding each other. In a way, though, you building the mystique, because who knows if some of these fighters would have been undefeated in the boxing if they fought each other early on without having the big money fights. If Errol Spence and Crawford fight right now, and somebody get that one, I'm not saying they can't be legendary, but imagine now they just keep getting wins after wins after wins. If they end up getting that loss, they might already be legendary status, and we won't even care about that one loss, because we'll be like, look how much he accomplished that he got that loss. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And before we end, going back on what we talked about last week, you asked what are undisputed fighters that we have in boxing right now. All 3 of them are women, which is Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
She's undisputed at lightweight. You have Cecilia Brækhus.
Yeah.
She's undisputed at welterweight. And then you have Clarissa Shields. And she is undisputed at middleweight. And she's unified at light middleweight. And she's supposed to fight after this whole thing that's going on, this whole pandemic is over. Yeah. She's supposed to unify at light middleweight to probably become the first boxer ever to be a 2-time undisputed fighter in different divisions. But technically, the fighters that had 4 belts after the 2004, basically undisputed, Bernard Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor, Usyk, Terence Crawford, and these 3 ladies I just named. It's only be 7 fighters that was able to held the 4 belts when the new era of Undisputed started in 2004.
Yeah, so basically, with the WBO, when
Yes, with the WBO, yes.
when the other boxing organisations recognise the WBO. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And I made a mistake last week too, Coach.
Oh.
We talked about Floyd Mayweather's first championship.
You
when he became a world champion.
Yeah.
I said 19. He turned pro right after the Olympics. The Olympics was in 1996.
Yeah.
I think he turned pro in October 1996.
Yeah.
He might have been 19. He became world champion in 2000. I forgot the exact year. I think it was 98. He was 21. He was 21 and we became world champion. So he wasn't 19. He was 21. That was 2 years into his pro career. So it took him 2 years to become a world champion.
Okay.
So I had to rectify that and come with the hard facts.
Enough of Floyd.
Oh man, that's all. I just had to come back and
tell
the people the facts.
Right, Jace, thank you very much for talking to Mpgymbox podcast today, mate. For another episode, we'll get cracking and prepare another episode for next week. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah, my pleasure again, Coach. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much.
And I hope everybody out there is staying corona free and staying at home and washing hands.
Thank you very much, mate.
All right.
Yeah, mate. Bye.
All right, Coach.